My name is Alyssa Monroe. I'm 28 years old, and the last time my mother touched me, it wasn't to hug me. It was to humiliate me. "Watch this," she said, loud enough for the entire brunch table to hear. We were at the garden room downtown. White roses hanging from the ceiling, champagne glasses catching the light, my aunt filming everything for her Perfect Family Moments Instagram. I had just finished telling them I'd turned down a job offer. Not because I couldn't get one, because I didn't need one. My mother smiled that tight, polished smile she saves for strangers. The one that says, "We are better than you." She lifted her coffee cup slowly. "Watch this," she repeated, and then she poured it. Hot coffee ran down my hair, soaked into my silk blouse, burned against my collarbone. Gasps rippled across the table, but no one moved. No one stopped her. "That's how we treat trash," she said, dabbing her lips with a napkin like she had just spilled a little water. Trash. That word didn't surprise me. I'd been the mistake since I was 12. The daughter who didn't fit the country club mold. The one who asked questions about where dad's investment money really came from. The one who refused to marry for status. My younger sister Madison snickered. Maybe now she'll stop pretending she's better than us. Better than them? That was the irony. Because the job offer I turned down, it was from my own company. The company they didn't know existed. See, 3 years ago when Mom encouraged me to leave the family real estate business, after Dad quietly removed my name from every partnership document, I didn't cry. I listened. I watched. And I learned. I took the client list I had built myself. The luxury buyers. The quiet investors. The people who liked dealing with someone who didn't treat them like a walking wallet. And I started over. Under a different name. Different LLC. Different city. What my family didn't realize was that half of their biggest new investors over the last year came through me. Through shell introductions, through referrals, through quiet leverage. They thought they were thriving. They were actually standing on a platform I built. And that Sunday brunch? It wasn't random. They invited me because they needed something. My mother finally set her cup down and leaned closer, lowering her voice. "Your father's firm is restructuring," she said sweetly. "We need to consolidate ownership. It would look better if you signed a statement saying you voluntarily stepped away years ago. No claims, no disputes." There it was. Paper slid across the table toward me. They didn't want me back. They wanted protection. Because the new development project, the one in Lakeview Heights, the one they were bragging about all morning, the financing was hanging by a thread. And I was the thread. I wiped coffee from my eyelashes and stood up slowly. Heads turned. Phones subtly lifted. "You're right," I said calmly. "That is how you treat trash." Mom's smile widened. She thought I was breaking. Instead, I reached into my bag, pulled out a slim leather folder, and dropped it in front of Dad. Inside were purchase agreements, signed, stamped, verified, for 62% of the private funding behind Lakeview Heights, held by a holding company, mine. Silence swallowed the table. Dad flipped pages faster, color draining from his face. "You," he whispered. I leaned down, meeting my mother's eyes. "You should have watched closer." Because in exactly 48 hours, the emergency vote would trigger. And when it did, ownership would shift. Not just of the project, but of the firm. And the only person who wouldn't be signing away anything was me. And 48 hours after my mother poured coffee on me, my father realized he had built his empire on land he didn't own. Monday morning, 8:02 a.m. The emergency board meeting was scheduled for 9. I was already seated at the head of the conference table. Same polished oak, same skyline view. Same building my father once told me I'd never be mature enough to lead. His assistant nearly dropped her tablet when she saw me. "You can't be in here," she whispered. I smiled. "Actually, I can." By 8:45, the board members started arriving. Confused, whispering, checking their phones. Then my father walked in. His eyes locked on me instantly. "You think a few documents scare me?" he said, low enough that only I could hear. "You don't have the authority." I slid a single envelope toward his seat. He opened it. Inside was the official notice, Majority interest transfer pending board confirmation. Signed by investors he thought were loyal to him. But loyalty shifts when returns are higher. You don't have 62%, he muttered. I have 64, I corrected calmly. 2 more came in this morning. Madison stormed in behind him, heels sharp against marble. This is insane. She doesn't even work here. I leaned back in the chair. I never stopped. See, while they were attending galas and posting curated family photos, I was building relationships quietly. Investors talk. Developers compare numbers. And when they saw how my side projects outperformed the firm's traditional model, they followed performance, not ego. At 9 o'clock sharp, the legal counsel cleared his throat. We've reviewed the documentation, he began. The holding company, Monroe Strategic Holdings, does in fact control a majority stake in the Lakeview Heights development. And per the bylaws, that triggers voting rights in restructuring decisions. Dad's jaw tightened. Mom wasn't there. She never came to meetings. She preferred to influence from behind champagne glasses and brunch tables. But this? This wasn't a brunch. This was math. And math doesn't care about pride. The vote took 7 minutes. 7. When it was over, my father no longer held controlling interest in his own flagship project. And because that project secured most of the firm's liquidity, control shifted. Not fully, but enough. Enough that he couldn't make a move without my signature. Madison slammed her folder shut. You're destroying this family. I stood slowly. No, I said evenly. You did that when you decided humiliation was leadership. My father looked older in that moment, smaller. What do you want? He asked quietly. That was the question they should have asked years ago. I walked to the window overlooking the city. I want accountability, I said. A forensic audit. Full transparency on the offshore transfers. And I want my original partnership reinstated, with backdated equity. His head snapped toward me. You wouldn't dare expose... I turned. Try me. Silence again. Because we both knew something he didn't want the board digging into, where some of the early capital really came from. And who signed what? He had underestimated me. Twice. First, when he removed my name from the company. Second, when he let my mother pour coffee on me in public. By noon, the agreement was drafted. By 3 p.m., the audit firm was hired. And by dinner time, my mother called. Her voice was icy. You've embarrassed us. I laughed softly. No, I said. You embarrassed yourselves. She paused. You think money makes you powerful? No, I replied. Control does. And right now, she didn't have any. But the real shift hadn't even happened yet. Because while they were scrambling to contain damage, I was preparing something bigger. Lakeview Heights wasn't revenge, it was leverage. And the next move was going to change our last name forever. And revenge was never the goal. Control was. 3 weeks after the board meeting, the forensic audit results came back. I didn't expose my father. I didn't need to. The numbers spoke for themselves. Offshore transfers, undisclosed consulting fees, political donations funneled through shell vendors. Not illegal enough to land him in prison, but messy enough to scare every investor who valued reputation. And reputation? That's oxygen in real estate. The board called an emergency session. This time, no one questioned why I was there. My father didn't look at me when the chairwoman spoke. Effective immediately, she said, Mr. Monroe will step down as acting CEO pending restructuring. Step down. Such polite language for collapse. Madison tried to object, but her voting shares were diluted after the restructuring. Funny how quickly power evaporates when it's built on borrowed confidence. Then the chairwoman turned to me. Ms. Monroe, as majority stakeholder of the Lakeview project and now primary equity holder in the firm, would you be willing to assume interim leadership? The room went silent. Years ago, I would have begged for that sentence. Now, I let it hang there. I'll accept, I said evenly. On one condition. All eyes lifted. The Monroe name comes off the building. You could hear the air shift. My father finally looked at me. That's my father's legacy, he said hoarsely. No, I replied. It's your ego. The rebrand proposal hit the table. New identity, new governance structure, full transparency policies, independent compliance oversight. And one more line item. All executive compensation tied to measurable performance, not family position. The vote passed, unanimously. 2 days later, workers began removing the polished steel letters from the top of the downtown tower. Monroe Developments. Gone. My mother called again that afternoon. Her voice wasn't icy this time. It was shaken. You've erased us. I stared out my office window as cranes lifted the last of the signage. No, I said calmly. I corrected the record. There was a long pause. You humiliated your own father. I almost smiled. Mom, I said softly, remember what you said at brunch? Silence. That's how we treat trash. Another pause. You taught me that. I hung up before she could respond. But here's the part no one saw coming. I didn't keep the company. 6 months later, after stabilizing the finances and restoring investor trust, I negotiated a merger with a national firm at triple its pre-scandal valuation. Stock options, board seat, personal exit package. Life-changing numbers. My father received his proportional payout. Legally, fairly, without favoritism. For the first time in his life, he earned money without control attached to it. Madison moved to Miami. My mother stopped hosting brunches. And me? I started a foundation. Quietly. Funding young women who were pushed out of family businesses. The kind who were called mistakes. The kind who were underestimated. The kind who were treated like trash. The last time I saw my mother was at a charity gala. She approached me cautiously, eyes scanning the room as if expecting witnesses. You've changed, she said. I held her gaze. No, I replied. I stopped asking for permission. She looked smaller than I remembered. Not because she shrank, but because I grew. The coffee stain from that silk blouse never fully came out. I kept it anyway. Folded. Stored. A reminder. They thought humiliation would shrink me. It built me. They thought pouring coffee would define me. It branded them. And if there's one thing I've learned, the most dangerous person in the room isn't the loudest. It's the one quietly building ownership while you're busy performing superiority. They told me I was trash. Now, I own the landfill, and I decide what gets thrown away.